Okay, so for this week, it is the complete project module, and there's really only one thing you have to do, really, and that is submit your project, right? And we definitely want to submit it correctly because there are a lot of essentially guidelines to that final project because it is such a large percentage of your grade, right? A large chunk, about 60 points, I believe. But before we get to that, I would like to go over Module 12 review. That is last week's module. I'd like to go over the quiz for Chapter 12 and then look at the last module you have and the assignment within, okay, like we typically do. So let's hop over to Blackboard. I'm going to go to modules. Oh, and maybe before we go on to that, I do want to remind you again about your SOIs, Student Opinionaire of Instruction form or survey that I'd like you to fill out. So if you have not filled it out, please do. You have until December 13th to do that. All right, so just a few more days opportunity to fill that out. Okay? So please do that. We'd like to get 100% of all the students to fill out that survey. Okay? All right, so let's go to Module 12. So the title of the module is called Web Publishing Basics. And what we looked at are other areas that we really need to consider, right, when we publish our website, like the web host. You've been using it all along, right, throughout the semester. I think we started in Module 4, I believe, right, is when you started to use that host. You didn't really know perhaps why you were using it or what are some things I should really consider when choosing a host. I just simply said the guidelines are needs to be probably free because you don't want to pay for it, right, unless you're already paying for it through your internet service at home or at work. And it had to be ad-free, right? Those are really the only two guidelines. But there are really more guidelines that you want to consider when you want to really do work and put a client's website on using a host. We definitely don't want to use a free host. So that was what we looked there. We looked at how to publish. We looked at search engine submission, how we do that, optimization of websites, and accessibility and usability testing for your sites. So these are all part of publishing basics. All right, so a lot of really good stuff in the module, I believe. I added an additional set of objectives, supplemental objectives about e-commerce, and I thought that might be helpful. I think it maybe touches on it in the book, but it doesn't really go in any depth to it. Not that the information I provided does, but it does give you a nice, well-rounded idea of what to think about or look at or consider and benefits and such about e-commerce, right, and that business model. Okay. So it was Chapter 12. You had key concepts. I did put up the screencast. I don't believe there were any tutorials. And then your first assignment was the DQ because you had two. You had a DQ and a quiz. Okay, there we go. So your DQ was titled, I believe, Domain Names, and that was under the mandatory discussion question. There it is, Domain Names. And so what I wanted you to do here was think about your project, of course, and think of 5 to 7 domain names that would work, right, for your project. Of course, they had to be available. They couldn't be already taken, right? So 5 to 7 second-level domain names for your project, and explain why you chose that particular name outside of because it was available, right? So it had to serve some sort of purpose. It had to either, perhaps had the name of your project in the domain name itself, or some other reason. It was an abbreviation of your project, so on and so forth. Okay. Any questions, comments, feedback on the DQ? You did not have to purchase the domain, of course, right? It was simply thinking about it, right? Good consideration and thoughtfulness about what in the future you might do to choose names, right, for possible companies. You may get a client that says, we don't have any space on the web. We don't have a presence. So I need you to do everything. I need you to come up with a host for us. I need you to come up with a domain name for us, right? All these different things. And so you need to be able to provide them solutions. Okay? Yep. They may not want anything to do with it. They just need to know they need to be up on the web, but they don't have time or have any interest in doing what it takes to do it. right? And so that's where you come in if you'd like to be a consultant or you work for a company that does that kind of thing, right? So any questions about the DQ? Yeah. Okay. Oh, alternative or something like that. Okay, yeah, GoDaddy has, yeah, it has like the premium list or something like that, right? Right. So here are some other options, right? Yeah. ABC, something, and then it like had the same with like a bunch of either prefixes or suffixes they added. Yeah, there's a lot of TLD, a lot of top level domains. Um, yeah, and they're like there are so many now. Yeah, it's crazy. Yep. Yeah, but the leader is still .com, right? I mean, that's just a default. Everyone knows that, right? Without even giving the top level domain, it's an assumption that it's a .com. So if you don't get a .com domain name, then you'll have to specify. Oh yeah, it's .net. Oh what? Oh okay, I write that down. It's like or and if they don't write it down, they go to .com. It could be some other company completely, and so now you're out of it. That's right. Absolutely. That's right. Yeah. I mean, just think of White House, whitehouse.gov, right? I don't know if they have the .com site anymore, or they have it, but in the past, the .com site was a porn site. So when you do whitehouse.com, you'd be like, what the heck? And you'd see, like the White House, but then it'd be like a porn site. And you're like, uh-oh, I think I went to the wrong site. This is not a government site. So it's just pretty odd, So testing that kind of stuff is interesting to see what comes up with large name domains, testing to see who is buying what. So it's pretty interesting. So, all right. So let's see. We're done with the DQ, and then I've also included, in addition to the e-commerce little set of slides, I've included a video as well as a definition of what SSL certificates are, secure socket layer is, the SSL portion, because that kind of goes hand in hand with e-commerce. So that might be helpful and useful to you. Okay. And then, of course, the last thing you had to do was a quiz. That's all I had was a quiz. 10 minutes, 10 questions, just like the other 11 that you had. All right. Any questions about the quiz or comments? All right, we are going to go specifically over the quiz, so we can do that in just a moment. Okay. If there's no other questions for Mod 12, let me go ahead and check that off. Perfect.